Thomas Hobbes would argue that man is inherently selfish and violent. In my view, I don't think man was born selfish and violent. It might be that maybe because of the pressures of the institutions that govern society, that govern man, that forces him or her to engage in a state of violence in defense of the values that they believe in and subscribe into. And I am of the view that for those, all of us as members of human society, all we want is peace. It is the manner in which we are governed and the structures that exist within society that forces us into boxes where we have to fight for the kind of peace that we want. So for instance, those that are considered to be liberation fighters or liberation movement, be it it's Al-Shabaab in Somalia, be it it's Hamas in Palestine, or be it the African National Congress in South Africa. All they were fighting for, and the reason why they resorted to violence was in pursuit of peace and justice. And it has been disproved to that point by the case of South Africa, for instance. For the longest of time, I think for 50 years, they identified Mandela and those that fought alongside him as terrorists, until 50 years later, the same people who define them to be terrorists are the ones who are the first to define for us who is the freedom fighters are, who are the figures of peace are. So at one point we see these figures as people who were considered to be terrorists. I mean, Martin Luther King was considered as such in the United States during the Civil Rights Movement, but today he's considered to be a figure that represents non-violence. So it depends on an era, and it depends on the perspective of those who are in positions of power. But generally, I think all of us, what we want is peace. And I don't think it is something that we should only be attributed to those who study peace, and only them can perceive the people who are inherently peaceful. Even the ones who study peace, I can promise you, I advocate for peace not because I cannot advance violence. I can. Pushed to do so, I will do that. I constantly say this, even in our country. If we are put in a position where we have to fight for the liberation of our people, we will pick up arms and do the same. So, but we choose peace. So, because we are peaceful beings, and for those who came before us, those that we draw inspiration from, we understood that the methods that they deployed at the time in which they deployed them was not necessarily because they had fascination over violence. It's because they wanted peace and they wanted justice. And they were not heard in their pursuit of peace through non-violence means, and they had to adopt violence as a means to force those who cannot listen to listen. So, in short, I still believe in Rousseau's point of view that we are born inherently in our state of nature as peaceful individuals, and we should continue in pursuit of peace and justice and harmony in society. For the opposite of those is nothing but destruction for humanity in general.
So with regard to your question, I've got a lot of ideas. I'm trying to structure them. So your question is about issues of political identity. Now, I say to that, yes, we have to have a group that holds us as a country together. We call that social cohesion, which is all well and good. Now, in South Africa, there's this tendency that, every now and then, especially when there are big tournaments like the World Cup or rugby, cricket, we tend to be united, which is very superficial. Because we become united for 3 weeks. After that, I'm sorry to say this, white people, because they are in positions of power, they go back to their workplaces, they oppress black people, right? And that social reproduction continues, right? So I fully concur with him that it's not the conscience of human beings that determines human behavior, but the material conditions. So long as we don't address you see, we cannot be united over sport, because it's not sport that divides us. It's not sport, it's the land that she spoke about earlier on. So we need to be, now there are people now who are framing this discourse of, no, let's come together, when there are big matches, you see, we can speak the same